You have all heard, I'm sure, the expression, separation of church and state. And that's supposed to shut the church out of discourse in the public square. You can't say that. You can't do that. That's mixing religion and politics. It's right in the Constitution, separation of church and state. Well, not exactly. What do we have in the Constitution? We have the Establishment Clause. What does that mean? It means that there is no established church in the United States. No established church. In other words, the founders were very cognizant of the Anglican Church being the state church in England. And they said, we're not going to have a church state here in America. That was pretty well understood at the time. The churches were always allowed to have a place in the public square and address the issues of the day. Back in 1952, there was a case that went before the Supreme Court called the Everson Case. It had to do with the busing of Catholic school children to school. And the case was brought up in the state of New Jersey and went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said you would be in violation of separation of church and state. Well, the majority opinion said that because you would be supporting religion. And one justice in particular resurrected this term, separation of church and state. Hugo Black, I believe was his name. And he said, there is a separation of church and state in our country. And he went back to a document written by Thomas Jefferson. In 1802, Jefferson was asked by the Danbury Baptist Church in Connecticut as to whether or not they are required to pay taxes to the state church, the Congregationalist Church in Connecticut. And Jefferson wrote back in a private letter, there is a separation of church and state, which means you do not have to support a church with your tax money. That's what that meant very, very clearly. Used in Everson, and the busing stopped. Erroneously applied. A very, very poor decision by the Supreme Court. But since that time, it has been used over and over and over again, and people of faith feel as if they're breaking the law if they get involved politically in the issues of the day. It is the job of the church to be involved in the issues of the day. Why? The issues of the day have an effect on people, on their souls, and on the welfare, the well-being of humanity. And that's the church's job to do that. There was a philosopher. His name was Friedrich Nietzsche. And he's famous for saying that God is dead. Now, he didn't mean that he ran tests to find out if God's heart was beating. It simply meant that he said God is dead to society. He makes no difference in our society whatsoever. That we can make any law we wish as long as people agree to the law, and then we can create society in the image and likeness of man. When we begin to believe that we have no role in the public square, and we believe that society can make up the rules, all of us, our souls, our bodies, are in jeopardy because there are no rules anymore that separate us from the tyranny of the elites. You will recall that during the COVID crisis, many of the churches closed. And in many of the states, especially the blue states, by the order of the state. Thank God we did not have that here in Florida. But the churches closed nonetheless. And it was a perfect opportunity for the elites that wish to create the world in their image and likeness to begin to eradicate religion from the public square. And unfortunately, most of the churches went along with it. It was the biggest mistake the churches ever made. Since that time, church attendance across the board has been down 15 to 20%. The churches lost an opportunity to evangelize, and many of them felt that they had to obey the laws of the state or to do what was politically correct at the time. The only law the church has to obey is the law of God. And the churches blew that opportunity. We can never, ever let that happen again. In some states, Walmart was allowed to open, but the churches had to remain closed. What message does that send? Materialism. You can go purchase whatever you think you may need or not need, but you should not go to church on Sunday. A perfect opportunity for the secularists to gain more control over society and wipe out the idea that God's law supersedes any human law. Can never happen again. Never. That has to do with religion and politics. And a lot of us have a very narrow notion of what politics is. It has great moral implications. But it also affects other human institutions, what we call intermediate institutions. And one of those institutions is the media. The media is very powerful. We call it the fourth estate: the executive, legislative, judicial. The fourth estate, the media. Why? Because the media has such control over society, believe it or not. You might say, well, I have a very balanced view of things. I watch MSNBC in the morning and I watch Fox in the afternoon. The news is slanted, has a tremendous amount of power in a country, has great influence over all of us. It sways our way of thinking, and it sways our concept of right and wrong. Past week, over and over again on the news, they reported that the Israelis bombed a hospital in Gaza. Oh, they were howling the horror of this, that the Israelis could do such a thing. And they play that narrative over and over and over again, even when they found out that it was a stray missile from Hamas. And it did not hit a hospital, it landed in a parking lot. But how many people were swayed by that? The media has an obligation to tell the truth. A society can only work, a democratic society can only work when people know the truth. At this point, the media is endangering our society. The media is endangering our concept of right and wrong. And you have to be aware of that. I mean, how many more times do we have to go through fake news? And you know what? Reagan was concerned about the media. And Trump brought it to our attention about fake news. Whether you like the man or not, I don't care. The Russian dossier. Fake news. Russian collusion. Fake news. The bombing by Israel of a hospital in Gaza. Fake news. Pay attention to what the media is feeding you. It's slanted. It's dangerous. It's dangerous for our country. And it can be dangerous for your soul because you are coming to sometimes wrong conclusions. The media should present the facts, not the narrative that they want to present in order to sway the public to think a certain way. Let's take the last case. Society is built on a number of levels, institutions and organizations that the society must rely upon for truth, to survive, to pass on our heritage to the next generation. And a good deal of the corruption at the moment in our society is taking place in the schools. What children are learning or not learning in school. And why? Because God has been removed from the schools. And God presents us with the standards that we need to develop good human beings, to preserve their morals, to save their souls. When a child goes to school, what is presented to them has an effect on their eternal well-being. They go to school, presented with perversion of human sexuality. What do you expect from them as they grow older? I learned that in school. LGBTQ, this is okay, that's okay. I just heard the other day that there's a meeting of our local school board, and a couple of the members of the school board wanted to begin their session with prayer. And we're kind of shocked that they were not being paid attention to, that they were being put off. And I am told from a reliable source that one man, when they spoke, sat in the front row eating popcorn. That's what I'm told. I'm willing to hear the other side of the story. I haven't heard it yet. You've been watching the media. You saw that there were students in our Ivy League universities supporting Hamas. You heard that. These are the best and brightest, I suppose, of our country. How bright they are, I don't know. Their parents must be paying a lot of money to have them in our elite schools. But could you imagine Harvard, Columbia, Yale, out there, their students supporting Hamas, a terrorist killer organization? I don't care if you think that the Palestinians have a case. I don't care if you think that the Israelis have a case. There is no case for murder, the slaughtering of innocent men, women, and children, and to slit the throats of babies. There's no case for that. And that's what's coming up through our educational system. It begins when they're young. They go on to our universities where they are indoctrinated by left-wing professors. And then they have the audacity to go out and literally celebrate the murder of innocent people. That's what's going on. Oh yeah, we're talking about church and state. Yeah, the church does have something to say about it. And every church in our country should say something about it. And if they don't, maybe they are part of the problem too. One lady said to me one day, she said, "Father, you should stay in your lane." I said, "You know, lady, the whole world is God's lane. I see myself as EMS. There are no lanes. I'll cross every one of those lanes to do what's right and to help my people." Remember in the gospel, we usually hear it around Palm Sunday. Jesus is entering into Jerusalem, and the authorities are saying to Jesus, "Tell them to be quiet. Tell them to be quiet." And he said, "Even if I tell them to be quiet, even the rocks themselves will sing. Hosanna, Hosanna to the Son of David. Jesus Christ is Lord." God love you.